Hi everyone, welcome to the English Hour. Do you know what the
Let's
English?
get into it or something.
Yes, let's get into it. Do you know what the English Hour is? It's a program. I think it'll be the first Turkish English podcast in this format, and me and my friend John Beck will be talking about various issues such as healthcare, traffic. What else, John Beck?
Well, we can talk about a lot of different things. I think we're going to start off by talking about what we're doing here.
Well, right, we can, but what about artificial intelligence? It's been one of our focus points, yeah?
Artificial intelligence. It's
What
fun
about-
to talk about.
What about the SpaceX?
What about particle physics,
Oh,
quantum mechanics?
Why not? But I think that might go a little beyond the scope of what we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, at least for now.
Okay, yeah. We
But-
first need to educate students, train students for a little while, and then maybe we can go into the advanced stuff.
Yeah, why not? I mean, advanced is a relative term when it comes to something like TOEFL, for example.
Or the language itself.
Exactly. You're going to have to dabble in a lot of different areas. You're going to have some basic understanding of many different things.
That's true, but for example, when we talk about an exam like TOEFL or IELTS or PT, these are generally tests of English that aim to assess students' academic English. So
That's right.
that gives us a starting ground. So
Exactly.
we don't have to know everything. We can just talk about academic stuff and campus life, and I think it will be good.
Yeah,
We'll be good to go.
sounds fine. Yeah.
So I think we'll not be talking a lot about movies or series, but we'll focus on things such as I said in the beginning, traffic problems, global warming, or maybe healthcare, or living or studying abroad, because these are the topics that come up very frequently in such tests. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Well, I totally agree. And I think you have given us a good palette of different fields. I think you can add history in there.
Oh, that
you
is
can
true.
add geography,
That'd be
geology.
lovely.
Yeah. You can talk about maybe certain aspects of physics,
That is true.
especially the popular ones. Like, I think when I said particle physics, even though it is an advanced scientific field, it is not so advanced when you take a look at it from a more popular perspective.
That is true.
Like-
If you dumb it down a little.
Exactly. Yeah. You have many people talking about it. Maybe we can at least like talk about it in an informed manner.
Oh yeah.
Give people simple ideas.
But I think I'll have to do some reading first, because at this very moment I don't feel very comfortable talking about particle physics. The only thing I know about particle physics is the term particle physics,
Yeah. Well, it's a good
which
stuff.
is a shame, really.
I think,
guess-
I mean, right now it's not the time, but it's like when we do research and then when we go into an area of, expertise, an area of scientific research, then we're going to be more comfortable with that.
I think there's also this popular theory, which is the string theory, right?
Yeah.
Is that true? I think it's the string theory.
It is called the string theory. It's called the superstring theory. There are
Okay,
a few
yeah.
names being thrown around.
I've heard the string theory. So again, I know the name, but other than that, I have very little idea.
Yeah.
Okay, enough for physics, I guess, because this is not gonna be.
Yeah, I'm gravitating towards that.
Yes,
Like, I
we're
find
drifting
myself-
away from the main topic.
Yeah.
So everyone, let's get to business. So as I said, we'll be talking about issues that really matter to us in our daily lives, because when you talk to someone in English, you want to talk about something that matters, like your health, your country, your culture. What are some other things that might matter in a daily conversation with foreigners? What do you think?
Yeah, well, health is always a big issue. It's like you can talk about different diseases, disorders, illnesses, and all of these things are different. At least they're categorized in different ways. And you can also talk about like epidemics. I think that's a major one. We've had one in Ebola, for example.
Yeah.
And then we also have had recent talk of the cholera outbreak in Haiti.
Yeah.
Like the United Nations accepted responsibility for that, relatively recently.
Yeah.
So that could be another,
That is
major
true.
area.
Well, apart from that, I think we should definitely talk extensively on culture, especially on Turkish culture, because you know what? When I work with students one-to-one, when I tutor them, one of the goals is to make sure that they can talk about themselves in their country. And Turkey is our country. And one of the things that we can do as citizens, as people of this country, is to represent, because we are all ambassadors of our culture, right?
That's
we
right.
are a living representation of what our country, nation, culture, and history stands for. So I think all of us should be able to tell something about our history, which dates back centuries.
That's right. Even more than that. Sure.
Yeah, even more than that. We have quite a history, starting from China and going all the way up to Anatolia. The culture, the food, the complexity. The modern day Turkey has been home to the greatest civilizations of the earth, right?
That's correct.
Even the early civilizations, most people do not know that the Greek culture, most of Greek culture was based in Anatolia, in Ephesus, in Izmir, and in neighboring cities, or the invention of money, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, our country, our culture has been the cradle of many civilizations.
Exactly.
What do you think? What can we talk about?
Yeah, some of the most enduring civilizations as well. You're talking about the Ottoman Empire, for example,
Yeah.
which is very close to heart for us, because our country, the
It
modern
sure
day
is.
Turkey, could be seen at least partly as a successor to the Ottoman Empire, which reigned for nearly 600 years.
And
which is a tremendous amount
over
of time.
3 countries.
That's
Not countries, continents.
That's right.
In modern terms, I'm inclined to say countries, because a country seems to be a huge chunk of land. But then it was not a country, it was continents, 3 major continents over the rule of one empire.
That's right. And then you had the Byzantine Empire, you had the Roman Empire.
And part of the Persian Empire.
That's
I think
right.
they were on the southern border of Turkey, right?
Mm-hmm.
The modern day Iran
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
the successor to the Persian Empire.
That's right.
I
and
guess
then you
so.
have the Safavids, and then you go back. But the point of the matter is that this area, this region in the world, is very rich in culture.
That is so true. And I personally find it very disturbing that we don't talk about it. The Europeans and the other countries, they like talking about what they've accomplished, which is fine, because if you've done something significant, it's your right to talk about it. But in our case, we have so much to talk about, but ironically, we talk about it very little, or maybe we don't know that much about it, and most people don't have the linguistic ability to really delve into those topics.
Yeah, well, linguistic ability is one point to make. I totally agree with that. The other point being, I think there is a general lack of understanding of history, which is a problem.
For sure.
Unfortunately, because when you don't know about your roots, it is really hard to establish an identity for yourself, and also a vector towards the future.
Well, one of the things that I find very disturbing, and I still do, is the fact that in the Turkish education system, we are taught about the distant or the past empires and everything, but we learn very little about the recent past, especially the past 100 years.
That's a good point.
And I've personally found it very disturbing, because I think what has happened in the past 100 years is not entirely clear. So I think it's a it's a war being fought because there are different parties, political groups, ideologies, and so much has happened in the past 100 years. No one has a clear picture, or there is not an objective picture of the reality. And yeah, as I said, I find it really disturbing because we don't know much about what happened in the past, in the close past.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I think there are several reasons why that happened. I think one of the main reasons is the evolution of communication, like the mass communication that took place in over the last centuries, especially the last 100 years, has a lot to do with this, because our ability to record and save what we do as human beings in daily life has increased tremendously.
That is
and
true.
Especially over the last decades and over the last century. So what happened was this huge explosion of information that took place. And it's really hard to catch up with that, because
that is true.
If you look at Wikipedia, for example, you have millions of articles.
Well, you cannot look at Wikipedia; it's blocked.
Unfortunately,
in
at
Turkey.
least for now.
I find it a shame.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
hoping
difficult.
there is reasonable ground for that, but I find it, I don't know, questionable.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are like millions of articles, and a lot of them are about things that happened in the recent past, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
But it's like so much information and so detailed that it might be like hard to get to the bottom of that. Another point, of course, is just we talked about the educational system is not designed in a way that equipped you with that kind of information.
That is true. This brings me to something else. So, you talked about the explosion in communication, the media, the types of media that is available, and the means of communication.
Yeah.
Well, I think that has a tremendous effect on our identity, because in the past, cultures and countries were literally bound by their physical limits or borders.
Boundaries, exactly.
But right now, I think there is a globalization of culture. It's not a globalization of the world. It's also the globalization of culture, the globalization of language. And I don't know if you've noticed, but you've probably did. For example, most companies are going international. Most music is going international. For example, people in Turkey have started to eat the same types of food that people in Europe eat, or people in the US eat. You have, I don't know, like international brands such as Starbucks or Burger King or McDonald's opening up store in various countries, and they have huge multi-million-dollar marketing budgets. And if you can engineer the reality or the perception, you make the reality. You can really control people. You can really guide people in a certain direction. And I think the changes in the global landscape have really eroded the notion of culture and identity. What is your take?
Well, I think when you talked about manipulating people's perceptions, I was reminded of the saying, history is written by the victor. So I think it goes back to the problem of history.
This reminded me of a quote by Winston Churchill, who said, I can't quite remember the exact words, but it was something along the lines of, I think history will treat me favorably, for I plan to write it.
I see, yeah. Well, I mean, he had a point, at least partially, but it's like, I think history has a way, I think not history, but truth has a way of coming out, has its way of manifesting itself. So even though we talk favorably, at least some people, a lot of people in the West talk favorably about Churchill, a lot of us here in in Europe, in Middle East, in places where different cultures and civilizations meet, do not really think very highly of him. So maybe he was right, maybe he was wrong. Well, going back to the idea of history being a very important area to consider, I think here what we're trying to do with English, with the English language, is really important in the sense that we bridge the gap between different cultures.
That is true.
Because English has become the lingua franca of the world. It's the common language that binds us all together.
Language, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's not a rule, but it's the de facto standard.
That's right. I mean, if you're doing business, you have to use this language. If you're doing science, you have to use it. If you're even literature, like we have literaries here, we have authors here in Turkey who write in their own native tongue, and they're doing a great job. But if you want to be recognized internationally, even though you can still use your own language and be recognized internationally, if you have the ability to write in multiple languages, you're going to go much farther than that.
That is definitely true.
So if you think about all of this, when you have a good grasp of the English language, you can break a lot of barriers and contribute to this human legacy that we've been talking about here. The history aspect, the cultural aspect, all of this comes together. And when you have, the ability the willingness to learn this language and to take it really to a level where you're proficient in speaking and writing, then you're going to have access to, types of knowledge that you didn't have before. And that's going to help you in many different fields and many different ways.
That is true. I'd like to touch on a different point. It's a related, pertinent, but a different point at the same time. So sometimes people do not really like the idea of learning English, speaking English, because it has almost become a requirement, right? If you are doing business, if you're in academia, you have to learn English and you have to speak it fluently, and you have to have a good grasp of the language to really work in an international setting. So it might not look fair to everyone, because if you come from a different linguistic background, such as Arabic, Turkish, Chinese, or something else, you might not really like the idea of learning a different language. But I'd like to approach the issue from 2 perspectives. So first of all, there are numerous studies showing that being a bilingual person or learning a second or a foreign language makes you a better person. It enhances your cognitive abilities. It enhances your problem-solving skills. So that's definitely an advantage in today's fast-paced world.
Absolutely.
And secondly, I think this is the critical point. Secondly, when you learn the de facto language of the world, you can make yourself heard. You stop being or playing the victim. You can play the victim for as long as you want. You might expect people to come to you, to learn about your language and culture. But that's a very passive approach. You can say, well, the Turkish culture is the great, it's the best, and expect other people to come and to glorify you. But that's not going to happen, because in today's world, that's not how things work. If you want to make yourself heard, if you want to get your name out, you have to make sure that you do it yourself. And what better way than learning English and using it, like using the language of a different country, of a different culture, to advance your own goals, to advance your own purposes. And I think in this case, English has a critical role to play. It can help you achieve your goals, both as a person and as the representation or the embodiment of a culture or nation.
That's right. I totally agree with that. I mean, I think this also goes back to a linguistic idea too. It's like, take the Orientalists, right? When they looked at the foreign culture, this exotic culture that was Middle East, that was the Far East, that was the East basically. They went ahead and explored it. They observed it, but they did more than observe. They also described. I think that's the key issue here. When you're out speaking a language, when you're out writing a language, when you're able to express yourself in a language, that gives you the ability to describe the world that you see around you.
And you can describe it the way you want.
Exactly, and that is powerful. That is really empowering.
That is very powerful.
And if that language that you use is English, it is all the more powerful, because more people than in any other language or cultural and language context have access to the English language and also the content that is created in the English language. So if you go into that environment, into that context, then that means that you're going to be able to project power. You're going to be able to express yourself in a way that you can't do with any other language.
Well, if you are the one writing the story, you're all the more powerful.
Exactly. Rather than being described, go ahead and describe and express yourself and contribute to this human legacy.
So everyone, this is the point. Write your own story. Don't let others write it for you, because you may not like their story.
I totally agree with that. And with that...
Okay, well, the thing is, I think we've overstepped our boundaries. I was expecting this to be a simple introduction to the English Hour project, but then, being the people we are, we've overstepped our boundaries because there is just so much to talk about, and it's kind of difficult to try to stick to the limits of a simple language. Then we started maybe at a single level, but then we went to use advanced words and phrases, which was fun, but I'm hoping that you guys were able to follow the conversation. If you're able to follow this conversation, I can definitely say that your English is world class. If you're not able to follow this conversation thoroughly, but you made it to the last point, then I congratulate you, because that takes a lot of courage and effort.
And motivation, yeah,
and
totally.
motivation.
Yeah, and speaking of motivation, I want to say one thing, which is, we are definitely branching out here. We're talking about many different things, but it all goes back to the same point, which is your personal drive that I see in you to teach people this language. And it is not just teaching something, it is teaching something that will change people's lives.
That is true. And another point, this really goes back in time. You might remember this or you might not. Years ago, when we were, I think in the third, or I think when we were juniors or seniors, we were having this conversation with you. You might not remember it now, but maybe you'll remember. We talked
at
about
university. Yeah.
Yes, we talked about using language as an instrument, learning a language not as an end but as a means. Mm-hmm. So when you use language as an instrument, when it becomes a powerful weapon in your hands or in your tongue, when it becomes a powerful weapon or tool or an instrument, you can really excel in that skill. Because if you learn a language with the intention of using it and using it throughout the process, then you progress and advance much faster.
That's
because
right.
It becomes a part of your life. It becomes a part of your arsenal, right?
That's right. Yeah, and there's the thing about language. It really opens up itself to you when you use it as a tool, when you recognize that it is an instrument rather than as an end, as a goal. So what you want to do to make sure that you treat language as a tool or an instrument is you want to really be curious about the world. You want to learn about the world. If you are in a state of curiosity about what's going on around you, then the language that you want to learn will become much easier to learn, because you need access so that you can learn about things. You need access to different cultures. You need access to sciences. You need access to arts. And how are you going to get that access? It's going to be through language. And English gives you the most access that you can get among any other languages. So I think that's the importance of English. And the second point here that is really important to remember, I think, is, as we said, you should treat language as an instrument to learn it the best. The second thing that you should keep in mind is that when you learn the language, any language, with a vision, with perspective,
with a purpose,
that will give you incredible amounts of motivation to keep going until the end. And you can make progress that maybe you have never dreamed of. But you need to have vision, you need to have maybe a global vision, and you need to have, this attitude of using language for something.
I've got one more thing to add here. I think you have to find ways to incorporate language learning into your life. It should not become a chore. It should be a part of your life. So it might be reading news article while taking the commute, or it might be listening to a podcast before going to the bed, or it might be listening to or watching YouTube channels in English in topics that you're curious about, rather than simply going to the Turkish channels, which you might find easier. Well, in this episode, you can call this a preliminary episode or an introduction episode, or as we talked, this might be an experimental episode. This might be anything. So
it's a conversation. And
it's a conversation.
That's the beautiful thing about it.
The nice part is, I think I've enjoyed this conversation.
I have too. Certainly.
And I hope our listeners will enjoy this conversation as well, because we've touched on a lot of points. But I guess I should promise, or maybe we should promise, that in the coming episodes we'll stick to a certain theme, because our goal here is to make sure that in each lesson, in each episode, you get the gist of a certain theme, a topic. For example, if we're talking about living abroad, we'll just delve into that topic and we'll cover that topic thoroughly, so that you'll know what to expect and what to say and what to use, right?
Exactly. Here's the idea that we have, right? We want to make sure that people listening to us, you guys, are well equipped to talk about or write about any particular topic that we choose to cover here. So one episode of this ongoing conversation that we're going to have, hopefully, just one episode is going to be all you need to write a short composition type essay, or maybe just speak for a few minutes about that particular topic. And that's going to be incredibly helpful for you in exams such as TOEFL and IELTS, to get you going in your academic career, or to maybe pass in a prep school, at your university. You're going to be successful there as well. So just as Hussein mentioned about artificial intelligence, for example, we can have an episode on AI, and then you can take all of the information contained in that episode and all of the words and phrases that are used, and you can take that and you can put it in a writing form or like a speaking form, and that's going to be very beneficial.
Yeah, our goal is to make sure that you're well equipped to tackle the challenges your life throws at you. So when you take the AI episode, or when you take the traffic or healthcare episode, when you go through those episodes, you will learn the key phrases and the key words and the concepts, and more importantly, background information and stories, because I think we'll be sharing a lot of stories. We both have a lot of stories to share. And when you combine all of that information, you will have the necessary information and the skills to talk about those topics. And our goal here is to prioritize the topics or issues that will matter to you personally in your academic life, in your professional life, and all around your life in general. So that's our goal, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's been a long episode, and now I'm looking at the timer, and it tells me that it's been more than 30 minutes, and I cannot personally believe it. It's been this long, but it was an enjoyable conversation.
Totally.
What do you have for us in the closing section, John Beck?
Well, I mean, I hope this is the beginning of a long, ongoing conversation, a flowing conversation, an organic conversation that helps people learn about the language and also learn about life in general. And I think, I totally enjoyed this, and I think I'm going to enjoy more of it as well. So good luck to all of you guys.
Well, same here. I'd like to just add an extra side note. I was thinking about doing a scripted run, but I felt like going the natural route. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that we did, because I think it wouldn't really matter, because right now I feel pretty comfortable.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's a little, how to say that? Unsystematic, maybe. Mm-hmm. We drifted away a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think we're able to wrap things up and connect the dots.
Yeah, we anticipated that, I think. I think we cherished that. We cherish just drifting off, because
it's
that's
fun.
that's when ideas come out. That's when you can really think about something in real time. So
that is true.
I think that's valuable.
Well, I would say I was thinking on my feet, but I'm not. I'm just sitting down on my chair. So it's been an enjoyable episode. As John Berg said, it's the beginning of a long journey. It might be the beginning of the end. The end of what? The end of, I don't know. The end of useless classes. The end of boring lectures. Because we want this to be fun. We want this to help people. And we want this to motivate and inspire people. And if these episodes, if these classes serve that purpose, then I'll personally feel accomplished and satisfied, and I'll feel good as a human being. That's my take.
Sounds good.
Okay, everyone. See you in the next episode, and I'll take some time to edit and upload this episode. As I said, this is a preliminary, this is an experimental episode, and I'm really curious about your comments and feedback. So if you have any comments, questions, and suggestions, make sure that you add that in the comments, or email me back so I can read what you think. Böylece İngilizce Saati programının ilk test yayınını dinlemiş oldunuz. Bu belki ne diyelim, yıllar sürecek bir serüvenin ilk test yayını. Siz de bunun bir parçası oldunuz. Teşekkür ederim. Buraya kadar dinlediyseniz gerçekten bu sizin İngilizce azminizin, sevginizin, alakanızın bir göstergesi. Bu kadar azimliyseniz, sabırlıysanız, ilgiliyseniz ben nihayetinde başarılı olacağınıza, hedeflerinize ulaşacağınıza canı gönülden inanıyorum. Bunu bir iltifat olsun diye söylemiyorum. Çünkü bu gerçekten azim, ilgi gerektiren bir şey ve siz de bu ilgiyi, azmi gösterdiniz. O yüzden bence bunu hak ediyorsunuz. Şimdi sizin için bir iki ödevim var. Biliyorsunuz ben böyle insanların eğitim derslerini, videolarını televizyon izler gibi izlemesini çok uygun bulmuyorum. Niye? Çünkü not almak, uygulamak, öğrendiğimizi eyleme dönüştürmek gerekli. O yüzden de sizden ilk başta ne istemiştim? Bu programı dinlerken notlar alın, öğrenin. Şimdi de aldığınız notlardan, öğrendiğiniz kelimelerden ne yapın? Örnek cümleler yazıp yorumlarda bizimle paylaşın. Daha sonra ne istiyorum? Daha sonra da Bu bölümle ilgili yorumlarınızı, görüşlerinizi, önerilerinizi, fikirlerinizi, aklınıza gelen ne varsa paylaşın. Çünkü sizin yorumlarınız, görüşleriniz çerçevesinde biz de format, içerik, ondan sonra sunum üzerinde çeşitli güncellemeler yapabiliriz. Şimdiden teşekkür ediyorum. Bir sonraki derste görüşmek üzere.